Hey, welcome back to my channel. I hope you've had a good and productive day or a good and restful day. I've had a very productive day so far, but I'm excited to get into this topic. So, as I've mentioned previously, I have been doing a bit of a quiet confidence slash introverted series, and this is for the creator who feels like they have to be online, but they don't belong online. And so, even though we always hear the saying that, we've all got the same 24 hours as Beyonce, and Beyonce is probably a very good example of an introvert creator in the sense that she only speaks when she has to. And that works for her in some sense, but then it also doesn't in other ways. But as I've mentioned in other videos, she came up in a different time, a different era of the internet. Parasocial relationships weren't really a thing. So she also benefited from the fact that she was able to put out her thoughts and opinions through more, I guess, segmented and separate forms of media. And I say that because printed media, there was always a delay. They had to film the segment, whether it was through TV or do the interview in person, then they had to write it up, and then they had to get it into the magazine, then it had to be approved, and then it had to be edited, and then it was released in the magazines, and then maybe you bought it or maybe you didn't. But now everything is instant. We live in an Amazon world, so to speak. The turnover of content is like that. The internet is constantly in your pocket, it's in your phone. And because each creator can now have their own page, the turnout rate of content is also expected to just be quick and accessible and easy. And you're supposed to show me what you're doing 24/7. But I'm going to propose to you a few different ways that you can, still thrive and make a living as a creator, even if you do have more of a introverted personality, or maybe you're an extrovert but you just don't want to put your business out there. Who knows? So the first way I've come up with to navigate this new era of the internet is to focus on short form content, because platforms like TikTok, for example, they're very easily digestible. Now, they they aren't necessarily the best for building a community of followers, and if you want to monetize your brand, you essentially need a community of followers. But it doesn't mean to say that there aren't creators that haven't built, a big following. I think if you're really good at short stories, so to speak, and you actually master that and find a way to hack the algorithm, and there are lots of YouTubers here that will actually show you how to hack the algorithm. But I think a good practice would essentially be just writing short stories, trying to figure out what the hook is, um, what the main story is, and then ending with an unexpected twist. And I spoke about that in a previous video as well, which was about Frank Ocean. If I remember the title, what was the title? Oh, yeah, I said, in this life, it pays to be a first mover or something like that. So you should definitely watch that video if you haven't. But in that video, I spoke about how people like Cisco in his music, Frank Ocean, and Sabrina Carpenter actually, they had a way of kind of building up to a crescendo in their songs or in their music performances. I think I've used the right terms. I'm really happy about that. And if you manage to do that in your short form content, where it's like with each and every single frame of the story, you're kind of building up to this moment where it's like climax, crescendo. Oh my gosh, yes, I loved it. It keeps people wanting to watch towards the till the end. And even though I've said you could practice writing short form stories, like literally try and make the stories one page, or if that's too hard, start with 3 pages, then bring it down to 2 pages, then bring it down to 1 pages, and that will kind of train your mind and your brain to go from introduction, hook, and the hook has to be interesting. Don't spend too long. Like, it's different to a long form book where the first few chapters are about world building. We don't have that time with short form content. You need to get into the meat. Maybe you could, do what other people do. They give you a preview. Maybe you could hook people with a bit of ASMR if that's your thing. You need to find something that resonates with you and what you like, and make that the forefront of your content. If I'm thinking about myself, not that I do short form content, but when I start my videos, I, first of all, I like to welcome you in because that shows you a bit of my personality. Even though it might not be the most super, extravagant thing out there in the world, me just saying, hey, welcome back, even if you're a first time viewer, what I'm doing subconsciously is like training you, oh, you should be coming back here. And if I keep doing that every single video, eventually you're gonna keep coming back here. So yeah, it could be very subtle. Another thing that I think works really well when you think of like a hook, when you're listening to a song and producers have their tag, like Mike Will made it. That's, I'm not really gonna sing it. That's one. What's another one? If Young Metro don't trust you, I'ma. These are catchy things. And when you hear that, it's like, oh, I know this. And that feeling of recognition and knowing something also eases the person into watching your content. Another good way that could be a hook, it could be a visual hook. I know Simply Shayo, I hope I'm saying her name correctly. She started off, it's not necessarily like it was only in the beginning of the video, but she was always wearing the same grey fur coat. So the minute you came across her videos, like that was the visual hook. You remembered and you saw, oh, this is the person that makes funny videos or funny spoken word type content, because you saw that visual hook and that immediate recognition hooked you in. And so you kept watching. And so, like I said, it could either be a specific sound, it could be a tag, it could be a visual look, it could be a funny snippet of the whole video that you're about to do, but make that intro hook consistent so that it builds up a sense of recognition with your potential followers. I've actually spent a lot of time just speaking about the hook, which has surprised me. But the hook is the most important thing at the end of the day. On YouTube, the hook would essentially be the thumbnail as well. And what I need to get better at is making consistent thumbnails so that when it comes up on people's feed, they know it's my video. So I think I did start that, in the first week. And then because I've gone on the introvert vibe, I've kind of swayed away, but I'm gonna make an effort to actually, go back to my core colors for my YouTube and the format. And I listen to my subscribers, I listen to people that follow me, I listen to my friends. I remember, and this is the thing as well, before I say my next point. Clarity comes from engagement, not from overthinking, which means clarity comes from you engaging with the work. Clarity comes from doing. And so if you're lost and you're like, I don't know what my hook should be, at first, maybe you should try out a couple of things and see how people respond. So now, if I bring it back to the point I was going to land on, when it comes to thumbnails and how I reached a point where I knew, oh, this is the, visual hook I want to have for my YouTube page. I was trying out a few different thumbnail formats, and then one day, you know, a subscriber said, oh, I really like that thumbnail. It was just one subscriber, but it was the first time a subscriber had mentioned it. And so from that moment forward, I said, oh, I need to do pretty much all of my thumbnails in this format because for some reason it caught her attention in a different way. So yeah, listening to the feedback of your subscribers is key. And following on from that, you can also listen to subscribers when it comes to the topics that you decide to talk about. You know, that could be your way of actually gaining a following because a lot of people just like to talk about what they want to talk about at the end of the day. But let's say you have 10 followers and you actively engage with them and you listen to what they want to hear from you. They're more likely to share your content with other people because you have really built up in a sense, a parasocial relationship without having to divulge personal information about yourself. So yeah, just listening to feedback, actually responding to people because nowadays it's actually hard to get a comment and a like. So just first and foremost, human decency, but number two, appreciation and gratitude for the fact that someone, actually overcame, I don't know if it's like internet fear or internet shame, and commented on your video, make sure you comment back. And if they ask for a specific video, try your best to do it, because that's going to make them more invested in your channel and more likely to spread whatever it is that you're doing. Um, Aside from that, I do have a couple of notes just to remind me of what I wanted to say today. I think I touched on this, so I'm going to go to the next point. So, if you are an introvert, choose platforms that are aligned with your rhythm and cadence. And I say this because in my video on India Love, I did mention how I feel like she has quite an introverted persona, and she has now decided to be a streamer, which is constant. It's a loud platform. It's always being present, always in your face. And I just don't think a platform like that is best, for the kind of like content that she's doing. And so I would honestly try and stray away from platforms that encourage you to literally share your whole life away. Like, I know most contents will want you to post regularly, but at the end of the day, consistency beats all. Okay, it just beats everything. And so, yeah, maybe not a Twitch. Maybe you could focus more on a Pinterest. That's pretty low score. Like, yeah, you could post a couple times a day if you wanted to, or you could just post once a day. But it's different than having to actually be online, be on camera, perform. You could batch create your content, for Pinterest, make your pins for 1 week, and in 1 week, you make your pins that could probably last you for a month. Maybe for the rest of the week, you're just engaging with life, taking in inspiration. The next month rolls around, you spend another week creating your pins for Pinterest. So, yeah, just definitely always try your best to find the platform that suits you best. Remember how I said Frank Ocean went to Tumblr? There were other platforms you could have went to, but that one, it wasn't as noisy. It's probably the most introverted platform that could exist at that time. So always do your research. I know there are other platforms. I'm not fully aware of it, but Lemon 8, there's always different things that might not be as popular. But then again, it gives you that first mover advantage. I think the next point I want to land on, I want to just decide if I want to do it in this video or another one. Yeah, I'm going to speak about it in this one. This is actually straight from Beyonce's playbook, but doing documentary style content, because a documentary is literally about revealing the thought process, the mind of the creator. It's very much in tune with being an introvert. And so you could make your content, whether it be music, it could be a fashion lookbook, or it could be an actual fashion collection. And then whilst you are, in the process of creating that piece of artwork, you have been filming yourself, maybe asking yourself reflective questions. And so when people feel like they know what inspired you on a deeper level, they get to see the hardships that came with creating the process. Everyone likes to support someone when they see them as, going through some sort of trial and then overcoming. That's essentially what life is about. You have a trial, you overcome. And documentaries are able to showcase that in a cinematic aspect, essentially. And yeah, maybe for each song, you could do a documentary. It's still work, but maybe, I don't know, if you have friends that you could use as videographers, or you could just like self film yourself, like set up a tripod of you being in the studio and then engaging with your fans. Another informal way of, I guess, documenting, even though I said streams were horrible, but I was specifically speaking about Twitch. But if you do a live stream every single time you're in the studio, that's a great way to, build a following. There's one person I can think of in particular. What's his name again? I said I can think of him. Ambrose Jr. But I would really enjoy, this is like a up and coming artist. I would really enjoy seeing him being in the studio. And he wasn't always engaging with us. That's why I'm it's a bit different to being like a Twitch streamer where you are, essentially engaging with the chat, Whereas, they're there making the music. I'm getting to see the process. Like, oh wow, like the song is being formed. And then maybe after like 15 minutes, he might come engage with the audience, ask us a few questions. What did you think about this? People love to be involved in the process. So that's even like a step further than the documentary, because now people have direct input into what you're creating, even more investment. So yeah, those are just a few ways that you can get, a following while still allowing yourself to breathe. I might make a part two of this video if I feel like I've missed any points. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. And with all advice, honestly, like online, even though I'm giving out advice, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because everything is dependent on you and your unique strengths, your gifts, your talents, and everybody has gifts and talents. So you shouldn't think that you don't. But that's why it always pays to either work with someone directly or think about a strategy yourself. So if you are stuck and you need some help, make sure to check out the link in my description box. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye.